Hello, hello, hello. Thursday afternoon, not our usual time. You know how I can tell? Because it's really hard to figure out how to get the lights right. Kind of heading into a winter on a Thursday at 4. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It is not our usual time, but I felt like I had to do a pop up this week because we have been having this ongoing conversation about some of the new acquisitions and some of the older collection at the Folk Art Museum in New York City. And there are so many beautiful things there that we have been kind of pouring over on this show, quilts and embroideries, samplers, different kinds of needleworks, right? Needle art. I think we've seen one rug from the new part of the collection. And it really is so much loveliness in one place, isn't it? But also, so many conversations get started when we start thinking about not just the image and what it sort of portrays and what it represents, who did it, where it came from, and all of that stuff, but also how these examples cross over to what we do in rug hooking and rug making. There's a huge amount of crossover, and that's what I think sends us down these really deep rabbit holes. And I love the rabbit holes. It's my favorite thing about running this show, and you being there and helping me out with the answers to questions. When we pool our knowledge about fiber arts, we are formidable, right? So I wanted to come back to this today before we get too much further, because my plan for tomorrow, which is Friday, is to open up at the magazine. I will do that before the show because I'll need to load some of the pictures and articles that are in at the magazine this month. I just got the new issue. So we will look at that together tomorrow night on Friday Night Cocktail Night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I wanted to conclude this conversation in the meantime because I didn't want to squander the slides that I have left for us to look at together. They are too good. A couple of other things that I wanted to tell you before I forget. I was sick yesterday. I am better now. If there was like an air silence in general online and all of that, I just did not feel well yesterday. Everything has just been so much, you know. But feeling better, and thank you so much. I know some of you detected by my voice that I was sick when I concluded the last show, and I was. This is better than a test. You all know, nothing bad, just a regular cold, and just dreary. You know, let's see what's going on over there. I knew it, Cheryl. It's raining on the Cape, 40 degrees. You know, we need the rain. We know that we need the rain, but it is cold and like it's the cold that goes through your bones, you know. My husband said the other day, this, I have a feeling this is a Dutch thing, but he said, hope he can't hear me. You have to feel the cold. You have to feel the cold 3 times before. No, I'm not going to do his voice. 3 times before your body gets used to it. I'm thinking that's not true, but it's very quaint. It's a quaint sentiment, and I'm thinking it's definitely been 3 and I'm still very cold. Things are just changing over here in New England. Sage Gardens in studio, great to see you. You're babysitting your grandson after school, but you can get online for a little bit. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun too. Welcome, it's great to see you. And Wendy, great to see you. Snow showers in Western Pennsylvania. It's remarkable how many people are getting snow, how many parts of the country right now are getting snow. I heard snow from Linda Ann in Canada, but we would think that, right? Snow. I think Karen said there was snow the other day in Black Forest, Colorado. I know my friends in the UK have had snow all along. Yeah, it's creeping its way closer. And I have to say, I'm a little bit excited. I'm hoping that this is the year we get some snow days from school and we go sledding again before it's too late. And I'm too worried about breaking every bone in my body, which I might have already happened. I think I have one more year of going down a hill on a sled, and I hope it's this year. Catherine, great to see you. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. Ryan, happy for you, sunny Thursday. Oh my gosh, fantastic. In Texas, celebrating. You're celebrating, your birthday was yesterday. I feel like we just had this conversation, but it must have been a year ago, right? I feel like I just said, Ryan, wasn't it just your birthday? But I guess it was a year ago. It is incredible, isn't it? Happy belated birthday, my love. Happy yesterday birthday. I hope it was a great one. I hope you are celebrating at least all week, if not all month. Great afternoon for pop-up coffee time. Oh, it is. I was feeling like it today. Joyce, great to see you. Also rainy in Pennsylvania. Welcome back. Sunny here in Missouri, but getting cool. Yeah. Oh gosh, we are sliding into that transition. Is everybody feeling all right? It's that time. I feel like we're on a ride. And I look at my friends very closely at this time of year and think, are you doing okay? Because it is that time, isn't it, when we're heading toward the shortest day. And there's a lot of stuff in front of you if you celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving. And I know Canadian friends have already had Thanksgiving, but it's a lot of stuff in front of us. And sometimes it is like overwhelming when you look at your calendar and say, this is how many days are left or weekends are left and all of that. Just hang on, hang on. We've got so many great projects to keep us anchored and so many great things to think about. There's always great things to think about right there, right there. And all the stuff in between, it comes and goes whether you like it or not. However you want it to come and go, it's probably not going to work out that way, is it? Everything goes by so fast, you know. Just buckle up and hang in there. Judy, great to see you. No matter how long and mild your autumn is, the first blast of winter feels like an insult. It does. It's really cold. It's really cold. I got up early at like 5 something, and I was outside in the garage, in the car, turning the car on at 6 because I thought there's been construction on our little side street. They've been putting a sidewalk into the side street, and there's like 4 houses on this street. Very strange use of money for a town that is so deeply in debt since the 1930s, but nobody asked me. So these guys have been there for like a couple of weeks, and they are the nicest guys. And I think I come and go, honestly, 10 or 12 times a day with like kids and stuff and back and forth. And they keep moving the cement mixer and all this stuff. And they're so nice about it. I always go, oh, sorry. And they're always like, no, it's okay, okay. And I thought this morning, I'm going to go get them a dozen donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. So I got in the car real early so I could do that before I had to get the kids to school. And I turned the car on and I went, it's pouring rain outside. I bet they're not going to be out there working on the street today. Sure enough, it rained all day here. So I guess I'm going to wake up early tomorrow and attempt to do the same thing. But it is a miracle that my brain said, oh, because I'm like a machine. I'm like, I go to car, I go get donuts now, 6:30, and it might happen again tomorrow exactly the same way. We'll see how it goes. Barbara, great to see you. Just a light dusting in Holly, Michigan. You're getting snow too. Carol, great to see you. Greetings from Wisconsin. Woke up to a blanket of snow. You're all getting snow. Now I am feeling jealous and left out. Olivia, I bet in Ireland you are getting snow. Hi from icy cold Ireland. Half the country is snowed in, never prepared as usual. I remember that from living in Europe. It was like every year, it was like born for the first time, no salt for the sidewalks, not, cobblestone streets everywhere. I bet they'll get it sorted out sooner rather than later, and it's great to see you. Um, it is a lot. It's a lot, Sage Gardens. It really is. And Lisa, hello from rainy and cool Pennsylvania. Every time I think of Pennsylvania, I think there are so many buddies out in Pennsylvania. I keep saying this. We need to plan something in Pennsylvania. I would like to plan something in Pennsylvania. There's so many buddies out there. And I drove through the other weekend on the way to New York. And that was what I thought the whole time. Oh, well, let's talk about some good stuff and let's catch up a little bit because I keep forgetting to tell you the same things. Now, the Design Like the 20th Century Photographer class, if you're interested in that, that is happening on Sunday. So you can tune in on Sunday. Absolutely fine to sign up for that still. There's no pre-work or nothing to print or download. It is basically one of the Design Like classes that I run. And it's about, it's 2 things. It's about creating your own designs specifically for rug hooking that are inspired by the subject, in this case, early photography, early to modern photography. It is also about learning about a different genre of art or technique or whatever period of art history, in this case 20th century photography, that you don't know a lot about. So there's a lot of stuff built in that is meant to be manageable, bite-sized, interesting snippets about various photographers, their lives, why I chose them, what was their special stamp on the world of art photography, right? I didn't choose journalistic photographers. I didn't choose war photographers. I chose photographers who did something different, each one of them respectively, and how the thing that they did could be transferable to us as rug hookers, whether you like realism, whether you like surrealism, whether you like extreme abstraction, whether you like the traditional. in the cozy. There's something for everyone built into this. So there's a series of exercises, but it's a lot of looking, a lot of observing, and talking about composition. So it's a great general composition class. And I never put you on the spot for these things. I never do, I promise. That is coming up. I also put up a few other things. A lot of you are signing up for Rebecca's classes. I'm going to have to check the numbers on that. If it doesn't say sold out, you're still good, but they are both getting quite full. Just so you know, Rebecca White Martin is doing the standing wool class, like the quillies and the standing wool on top of the mason jar lid. That's a demonstration class. That's not a kitted class. That's something you can watch and interact with her, and she'll show you lots of different techniques in that I think it's a 1.5 hour class period. And then she's doing a second class that's using your scraps to make holiday ornaments, also using many of the same techniques. Does it make sense to sign up for both? Absolutely. I'm sure she'll do different things in both. What if one is full by the time you log on? Do the other one. She's doing lots of techniques, right? She is not at a loss for techniques. She will do lots of techniques in each, and I know that they are very different classes. So that will be a lot of fun. I put up something I had up last year, right at the end of the year, and let me see where it is. Is this it? That is it. The rag rug trees. So this is a product I introduced last year not about this time. It was quite a bit later. It was a bit of a last minute brainstorm. This is available again. I have restocked this. I know a lot of people were buying it in the middle of the year, and I kept running out of it, and I was deciding whether I wanted to restock it, and I do. So I restocked this. It comes alone just with the trees. They're 2 different size trees, so you choose what size you want. Comes with the stand. It's a slotted tree, and there is a video that goes with that product. So you can see how I'm tying the knots. It all comes down to how you're tying the knots. It is not a hook or a needle project. It's a beautiful looking, very stable rag rug tree, I think in 13 or 17 inches. And you can also get it as a kit with tons and more than you could use on this one tree of wool strips, right, that are like plaids and solids, mostly plaids. So it looks a lot like what you're seeing in the example. That's back, which I think is a lot of fun for the holiday. I am just also confirming the other special product that I'm putting out this year, the murder mystery puzzle, right? Geared for rug hookers, right? It is a rug hookers murder mystery puzzle. It is a kind of a puzzle where you read the story. I will be reading the story live in the next week. I just ordered a prototype of it to be sure that it is like great quality. And once I know it is, I will start advertising it and selling it. So I just want to check it out for myself. But we will be looking at the murder mystery story together that is set at a hook-in, for a holiday party hook-in where somebody is murdered. And then you have to make the puzzle and figure out who done it. And it should be a lot of fun. And it is tricky. I hope that you are puzzled, but I think also that if you look at it closely and you think, and you look at it while you're making it, I think you'll notice some things that are very curious and maybe a little bit suspicious. So that product is coming up as well. That is my big product for this Christmas. I've been waiting a good half of the year to make a murder mystery puzzle because I love making murder mystery puzzles at Christmas. And I do it every Christmas with my sister, but I buy ones that have themes that don't necessarily have any, like golf, right? Or like murder at a winery. Like it's fine, but it's not stuff I'm particularly interested in. This finished piece is actually a hooked rug that was hooked by Mandy Cornish, and it's about a rug hooking party, and you will be able to relate. So that's a fun product. Fingers crossed that the prototype comes in really nice and that we are able to put that up for sale before we hit December. Too late. My eye just started twitching when I said that. Too late. It should be to you for sure in December. And if you plan on making it the Christmas party mystery puzzle over Christmas, you should easily be able to do that. So more on that as soon as I get that box. I did a couple other sneaky things in the last 48 hours. We looked at this piece in our last show. This is the Ruthy Rogers piece. We talked quite a bit about this because really there was so much to say. I think we all admired it hugely for its charm. I forget how old, we worked out how old Ruthy was when she made this. It was like ridiculous, wasn't it? She was like a little baby child, but she managed to produce this incredible piece of art with the red-winged blackbirds and a couple other birds, a yellow bird on top, the stripy bird on the side. We talked a lot about this piece, the shape, the sort of abstraction in the sky, the way it broke down. This is an all silk piece on linen. So this was a really curious and exceptionally well done. I can't even call it a sampler. It's not a sampler, right? It doesn't function as a sampler. It does include a practice border, but it is the same all the way around. It does have a lot of beautiful motifs in the center, but they are presented to us. Yes, I think you're right, Judy. 15 or 17. I had it in my head 15. That was the number I had in my head. I'm frantically looking through my papers thinking, why can't I find Ruthy? How strange is that? I think my papers, wait a minute, let me take one more look. I just want to jump in at the right spot. Not that. Looking at all these great names of other people who we talked about. How weird is that? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, got it. Think I got it. Yeah, Ruthy, yep. Yes, so she was born in 1778 and she made this in 1789. 78, 88. She was 11. Is that right? She was born in 1778. She made this in 1789. That's crazy. Marblehead, Massachusetts. And it's a small piece, 10, not counting the whole border and everything, 10.5 by 9. Absolutely stunning piece. But samplers were typically looking for a wide variety of motifs being practiced, including a variety of borders. This functions more like an embroidered picture. There are sampler elements to it, and it has the elements, like it's like a sandwich, but it's presented as a taco. You know what I mean? It's got like the bread, it's got the stuffing, it's got everything, but it's presented and it's a wrap, right? It's a crepe, it's a wrap, it's meatloaf. Who knows? But it is a little bit different. It reads more as a picture. And really, oh, Karen, hey, good to see you. It really is a stunning piece. So stunning, in fact, that this is one of the pieces that I didn't realize that I hadn't. Hold on. I didn't realize I cropped it like that. I did it as a pattern, just the central part. So as a line drawing, that's one of the things that's available now at Ribbon Candy Hooking. The links are in this video. If you're looking for these, this is the Crewelwork picture. That is what the Folk Art Museum is calling it, that we also saw the other day. And this is another one that I thought was worthy of translating into a line drawing. So these are available for you at Ribbon Candy Hooking. There's one more, but we'll get to it in the due course of things right now as we run the show. Now, we left off with Saddlebred Horse. Remember this long conversation about, and it was such, there were so many good thoughts that we were kind of kicking around about this being a very pixelated, square-driven piece, and the idea that the person who made this piece was probably looking at a cross-stitch pattern and literally translating the information in the black and white pattern, probably I would say 1940s era pattern, 30s, 40s, already color planning. Thanks, Barbara. We were saying this is probably translated from a sister craft. And probably it is. There were questions that we had about, let me stretch this a little bit. I think I said in this episode, let's make this a little bit bigger, because we were trying to read the center of the horse. Okay, it is patterning, isn't it? It is patterning. So there is a little bit of polka dot, very subtle polka dot on the top. And then in the middle, it's black and white, kind of a calico. And then it looks more, no, there's dots there too. And then a few more. There's at least 3 different prints with dots. And then going down to the legs, which are brown. And one of the questions that came up in looking Monday at Saddlebred Horse, why did the maker switch to, because it's an unknown maker, unidentified, switch to that tan color? It's not even brown. It's not even close, right? Probably because they ran out. And I'm just wondering, because isn't it fun to think these strange thoughts? Or what a way to occupy your brain. But I'm just wondering if the maker was thinking as they went along, maybe I'll make it with this black material. Maybe I'll make it, and then thought at the throat, like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. Probably got enough to finish with this floral. Did they then think, okay, ran out of that, let's move to, or do you think they did this kind of staggered sort of ombre feel to it, going, shelf by shelf by shelf of color, different prints? It's such an odd choice. I think it would, I don't want to say bother me. I think it would be less distracting for me if there wasn't such a distinct break to that very light brown at the bottom. I don't know. I mean, it's still it's a piece that is loaded with charm and mystery. It brings up as many questions as it answers. It is really an oddball piece, isn't it? Um, I don't know the answers to any of this stuff. I can only, like you, speculate and wonder why the very severe and sudden change of color. Usually it's something that happens thrift wise with running out of a specific print. But in this case, moving to a completely different color, why not to a dark blue or something? I don't know the answers. Judy says, I didn't realize the entire background was squared as well, with really subtle shading. Yep, it really is, isn't it? It's all like, this is what I would call a postage stamp quilt with all of these small pieces. It is very subtle, and the movement around the horse in areas, there is an effort by the maker. I'm just going to shift up, so be ready. You're not slipping off your chair. There is an effort to kind of do blocking, right? If you look at where the very, very subtle pastel sort of clouds of color come in, they are concentrated. Like there'll be one print that is all in one area, then move to white, then move to another. It's very sort of localized fills of one material, apparently until the maker runs out of the material. And that just seems to be the way that they are operating with this piece. It's a very mechanical, it's very curious because it's a very mechanical, mentally thought process in filling in accomplishing this piece, right? They got it done, but it's very, very sort of stilted because of the color choices not kind of being, they're not evenly sprinkled, right? It's not subtle the way that the blacks and the browns are mixed. It's very, very blocky. It reminds me of when the printer runs out. You know how maddening that is? And then you get the stripes of the weird colors and you're like, oh, great. Now it's going to print 20 test pages and then I'm going to be half out of ink again. Well, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's very curious. I can't say that I love that about this piece. I love the conversation that it brings about, and I love the pose of the horse. What I mostly love about this piece is that I am certain that it was either a needlepoint pattern or a cross stitch pattern that was literally translated um, into a large quilt form, right? Different form altogether. And it made me think of stuff like this that we have been talking about more often. Now, this is a more contemporary horse that I found on Pinterest, but you do see, if you still subscribe to magazines that are like the modern equivalent of Workbasket, like the crochet magazines, the knit magazines, the needlepoint magazines, even if you once a year get like the Halloween cross stitch magazine that costs like $27, once a year, you do see these patterns in the back and they do look just like this. And it is essentially information on a grid that tells you what block to make what color. And this is a cross stitch approach or a needlepoint approach. In needlepoint or counted cross stitch, we're going to see more color change, but this reminded me of the horse that we were just looking at. And my point is, if you were a very technical quilter, or say that you bought, because you can buy from different quilt businesses, you can buy small squares, like pre-cut squares. You still can do that. Say that you got pre-cut squares in this color, and that color. Well, hey, or you cut them yourself, with your rotary cutter and your clear ruler, you pre-cut your own material. You could absolutely string together, and I've done this before when I was more of a quilter and interested in the Impressionist quilts, remember those? And, I would do, or doing a around the world quilt, I would have all the little squares that I would cut with my rotary cutter, and I would literally sew them together one, until I had a long sort of string of all of these little connected squares, and then I would do another, and then I would sew them together. Then I would sew the long strips together. But if I was going to do like a Bargello pattern or something like that, if I had all of those squares of patterning in the same order, if I wanted them to look like Bargello, like thread was being pulled, I would have to stagger the first one, right, and make it the bottom one, move the bottom one up to the top, right? And so it would be the same pattern, but it would start to have a lot of energy and motion because it would slip by one square. That was a lot of fun. And point is, it's very easy to pre-cut squares, if you're looking at quilting as opposed to hooking a pattern like this, you can absolutely do it. It's like counted cross stitch. You have to be careful. You can't be spacing out when you do these projects. It's not like rug hooking, right? You have to be careful. But if you were to sew together that whole line of information, right? The first, starting on the left, reading it from the left, the first three have no information, just yellow. But then you get into like, let's look at line 20 where it says 20. It's like yellow, 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 brown, 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 yellow, 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 brown, brown, yellow, yellow, brown, and then all the way down yellow. You would read it just like that, and you would sew the blocks together in that order, and you would get this pattern. Now that is exactly I can't imagine that the maker of the Saddlebred quilt did this in any other way. I think this was absolutely the way that it was done, probably by hand, probably a hot mess, probably finicky fiddly factor, I almost said a bad word, off the charts, but it did turn out great, right? However we feel about it, and however sort of inexplicable the pattern or the color changes are in this piece, it still is a very interesting piece to look at, to talk about, and really to pull the technique from, because why not, right? Why not learn from this? And Karen says that leg, the leg that's lifted does not have a tan bottom. Let's come back over here and look at this guy. Let's look at Saddlebred Horse. Yep, you're right. You're right. So she like stopped at that row of black, and it is wonky, right? It's not flush at all. It's not straight across, unless it's just been pulled over time. One thing I'll say about this quilt, I can see a couple of little marks above the tail that look like stains. They could be patterns. I can't really tell. But for a white quilt, it's in very good shape. There's also absolutely no bleeding on this quilt, like somebody's washed it and the dark and light colors have bled. I don't see any of that. So it is in great condition. It's interesting. The maker obviously had a vision. Does anyone else have an opinion on this? Because I know, quilting bees, that's a whole other subject. We're not going there today. But with quilting bees, I know people work, almost like a typewriter. Yeah, you're working on this part, I'm working on this part, or you three are working on this part, I'm over here. I don't really know how a quilting bee would work. Do people who do quilting bees ever do this kind of a design, a pieced design, as opposed to an applique design? I just wonder if maybe that's the reason why we hit a certain place, the printer runs out of ink, and they move to a different color. I don't know. It's curious to think about. Judy says, it may have had stockings on 3 legs. Stockings. Judy, is that a real thing? Are you joking, or is that a real thing, stockings? I don't know anything about horses. If he has stockings on, he also has a stocking on the tip of his tail. Now, come on. Shouldn't at least the legs be the same color? It is funny, isn't it? It is funny, because I would think that maybe, I'm going to stop with this, but I would think maybe that it had been washed and that the cotton performed differently, but I don't think so. It doesn't appear to have been washed or worn at all. Very curious piece. I wish I could be sitting next to the maker to talk about, ooh, what you got going on there? Another beautiful piece, very, very different. This is called the Sally Hathaway Needlepoint Picture. Oh, that is a thing, Judy. Judy says when horses have light-colored legs, they call them stockings. Ah, like actual color change to the legs. I see. Okay, let me come back. That merits another look. I do want to look because, so, absolutely, it could be that there's a color change. It could be that this horse had stockings. Karen says in Appaloosa have tan bottoms of their legs. It could be that. Totally could be that stylized. Does not explain the change of that sort of floral through the chest of it, unless he's wearing a jacket. Maybe he's wearing a jacket. Does not explain the polka dots on the head. Maybe he's wearing a mask. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He could be doing anything. God knows what this horse is up to. This is a bewildering horse. But I like the idea of it being an Appaloosa or being a stockinged horse. That does make sense to me. In any case, it was a charming, for whatever reason, it's a charming decision to have a color change. And it's obviously very deliberate. Very deliberate. And that's what's so curious about it. And that's why all fiber arts, right? All art in general is worthy of conversation and looking at, because people will make different choices from one piece to the next. To me, that seems like a very technical choice. It's so technical that it throws me for a loop, because I think, why not soften it by like mixing? But indeed, if it is like the stockings on the horse, which I know nothing about, if Jocelyn was here, she'd be educating me too. It could indeed be that. That's a great thought. Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Karen. All right, let's come over to the Hathaway piece. So this is the Sally Hathaway needlepoint picture. The artist is known, that is Sally Hathaway. Her life was between 1782 and 1851. This was made in 1794. She was 12 years old when she made this. That's how old, no, Jossie isn't even 12. She's 11. That's crazy. 12 years old. Wow. Probably Massachusetts or New York State. This is silk on silk. This is 17 by 20 and a quarter inches. And this was a gift to the museum, to the Folk Art Museum in New York City. Silk on silk. So you know what that says to me? We are very lucky that this doesn't have giant splits in it, because you know how brittle silk gets after a time. And the time on this is 1794. Now that's a good early year for a piece. Looking at a piece like this that's in this condition. So we had a little bit of the conversation the other day. What, if you do want to donate stuff, what does the, maybe it is always the same. Yeah, maybe. What does the museum want? It wants pieces that are in excellent condition, right? Because that's always compelling. Looking at something like this and seeing it as if the maker literally just left the room, that is always interesting for people in a museum situation, scholars, academics, people looking at this for information. Really, it is pristine, isn't it? It is extraordinary. Now, as a composite, so this is a 12-year-old who made this. That in itself is incredible. I think I'm not so much of a needlepoint person, maybe not always the same. Yep, I see what you mean. I'm not a needlepoint person, but I think I'm guessing the design of the weeping willow is the stitch that's called turkey tracks. Does anybody know? Because it's a great repeat stitch. I know it's an easy stitch to do, and it came out so beautifully. It gives so much motion and softness to the willow tree. Now, this is a curious piece because it seems to me like a mourning piece, because I'm looking at a willow and it has a black background. And it has an urn, right? But I don't think it is a mourning piece. I mean, we're not seeing the name of the person who has passed. We are seeing what looks like a complete family intact. We aren't seeing any signs of death, right? The willow is a tree, so it's not always a sign of mourning. So I don't know what the intention of this piece is, and there's nothing known about it other than who made it and the year that it was made. It is a curious piece. This also functions a little bit as a sampler because there's a lot of practice stitches happening here. There's a lot of very dense embroidery stitches happening around the edges, right, where there's this sort of theatrical curtain, a proscenium, and what look like some cords. They could be stitches, but they could be cords on top. However it's done, whether they're stitches through the backing, silk, or whether they are laid on top and tacked on, it's curious because you can see them in front of the willow tree. It's very pronounced that they are on top and three-dimensional. And Wendy says, looks like a stage scene with the curtains pulled back. Their lifestyles seem to be always on stage, a lot of acting. Really, right? That's such a good point, Wendy. That's such a good point. This I'm thinking of Downton Abbey. Of course, this predates that by more than 100 years. But it is that sort of theater of manners, isn't it? Where you have to act a certain way, say a certain thing, indicate whether it's with your fan or your eyes or your head or the slightest gesture, what you really mean to communicate in a world where the rules were very tough, very rigid. So this is a fairly whimsical piece, definitely in the folk tradition. We are seeing quite small people next to a very big urn, and it's funny because I think that the woman and the child are supposed to be closer to us. I think that the man and the dogs are supposed to be a little bit further away because he seems a little bit smaller perspective wise, but we don't have any clues. We don't have a horizon line, right? We just have that bottom border, but we're not actually seeing like a vanishing point or anything in the distance that would kind of clue us into like how big is he? Where is he actually standing? It is functioning like a theater set, exactly like Wendy said. We are seeing a bunch of motifs jammed together, and she has managed to get in 3 figures, 2 dogs, at least 1 bird that I'm seeing. I'm only seeing 1 bird, some beautiful flowers, trees, and she has framed it out gorgeously. The green grass with the flowers growing, that whole grassy area is really pretty with the change in colors too, up to that sandy color. The curtains are gorgeous too. Yeah, they are tiny lap dogs. They're little rat dogs. They are tiny little things. You know, it's a funny piece because it makes me wonder with pieces like this. I don't know, but it makes me wonder when someone would start, and it's a young girl in this case. When someone starts on a piece like this, I wonder if the rest of it is planned out, you know, in your mind or whatever. I know that there were ways of transferring patterns with paper, you know, tracing or pinning or whatever, just to hold a space as a placeholder. But in this case, I'm not criticizing it because it is a lovely piece and a child did it. And so I would not criticize it. But in terms of a design, I didn't choose this one to put into the ribbon candy hooking store. Um, oh, interesting, Judy. Could they be on a shore or a lake? You know, that would explain, wouldn't it? That would explain why there is nothing in the background. That's really interesting. That works well as a solution. There is a lot of negative space in this piece, and the negative space is a little bit awkward, isn't it? It comes right down the middle, and it's almost like that man could be taller. But you know, it is what it is. Part of the charm of these folk art pieces is that there is not perspective and there is not correct proportion happening. And for that reason, you know, they are endearing and they are of their time. Composition wise, this one I would think would be, in my opinion, tricky to do because it feels very disjointed to me. It also almost feels like the set like of an actual show. Of course, that's not possible unless it's all a painted background kind of a thing. This would be a lavish set at that time too. I mean, they hardly had anything up on stage. But it's another curious piece. So many unknowns. I'm doing a show, Ted. There's so many unknowns, but the stitching that is present is absolutely exquisite. It's extraordinary. Is that black fabric or stitched? I think it's just fabric. Let me stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to unlock the photo. Let's see what else we can see. Sometimes the photos aren't hugely high quality. This one actually looks okay. I think it's just the silk. And you know, it's interesting because it brings up different questions. The people are very well done too, right? They're very well done. It's all stitched. None of this is applique. This is all stitching. One of the things that makes me think is that mourning is such a big deal, right? There's so many early deaths, right? Not because, well, people in general. If you lived in an area where there was farming or you had access to nice things to eat, then the idea that people were super short back in the day and tiny and malnourished, that's not a true idea at all. They were typically farming people in settled communities, and they were getting decent nutrition, probably better than I'm getting today. But at the end of the day, so many ways to get sick, right? And so many ways to end too early, and that's the reason why there's so many premature deaths and such a early mortality rate for men and women, obviously children especially. But there's a lot of black fabric around these days because when a family goes into mourning, whether it's for another family member, right, deep mourning, or like a neighbor or a friend, there's black fabric on everything. There's black fabric on the windows, on the mirrors. They're covering glass, anything that has glass or light with black fabric. Not to be sound awful and callous, but that means there's a lot of black fabric around, right? Plenty of black fabric around. Also, mourning wear, right? If you have something that's like black silk and you grow out of it, it might be that you want to use your, for example, enormous black skirt or petticoat or whatever, whatever garment you've got, you've grown out of it. Maybe there's no younger children. You're thinking about your dowry. You're thinking about making things as a young woman to bring with you into your, the house, your marriage household, right? Always thinking about the dowry chest. It makes sense, and we do often see a lot of these needlepoint pictures done on black backgrounds. And I don't know that it's because black fabric was very, very common. Um, I don't know. Black silk, right? It's not like it's a sort of working like homespun. It's like silk. Um, One thing that it does do is it gives great contrast to whatever piece you're talking about. It is nice to see pieces on black because you really can see the details. They super pop, and this one super pops. It's funny the style of clothing, right? Because this is post American Revolution. The hats and everything, they're just from a little bit from an earlier era, just like maybe 5 to 10 years out of date at this point. And it's funny because they do have that tall kind of, it's not a pilgrim hat, it's just like a tall crown on the hat was in style just a little bit earlier. But if this was done in Massachusetts or New York, right, we know that in rural areas, this isn't the Marblehead, it was the other one that was Marblehead. In rural areas, fashions changed a little bit more slowly. They got the news a little bit later. All of these things are interesting details when we are considering a piece and breaking it down, trying to relate to a piece. Here's another one, the Hannah Carter canvas work picture. That's the title of it at the Folk Art Museum, the Hannah Carter canvas work picture. This was made in 1784, and the years of Hannah's life are not known, but it is known that this was made in 1784 in Boston. This is silk and wool on fine linen, right? This is not homespun linen. This is fine linen. So this is a luxury project. This is that rare sort of instance. We don't know how old she was when she made it, but this rare sort of instance that most women did not have the available time or supplies, particularly fine supplies, in their lives to be able to work on a project that would take this long, right? This is definitely a luxury item. This was meant to enhance Hannah's house for sure, right? Whatever her situation was, it was meant to be a decoration, without a doubt. It's not part of furniture. It's not part of a larger piece. It is not a tapestry. It was something that was meant to be in a frame. It is. Ooh, are there no? This is 21 inches by 18, almost 19 inches. So that's bigger. It's not enormous, but it's a good sized piece. To me, this piece is extraordinary. One of the things about it is the color change. The blues, the teals, the sagey greens, sage. It has that Jacobean feel to it, doesn't it? And some of the same tropes: the butterflies with the spotted wings, the big fat bodies, the birds posed the same way, the layers of ground that are all rounded or scalloped. These are all sort of tropes. Barbara says, "What jumps at me are the angular curtains as opposed to soft drapes." Yeah, with that last piece, the Hathaway piece, very very strange and different. Um, One of the other things that's worth noting is that, thinking back to that piece, when you go to a historic house, it's like a late 18th century house, that sort of same, time frame. Sometimes you see, what the hell are they called? Pelmets. Pelmets, the wooden valances that you build on the front of windows. Those are pelmets, right? Something like that. They were made out of wood, and they were always, if you could afford to have them, they were super theatrical, either straight across, but often with a dip like that, often like a zigzag, sometimes shaped or scalloped, or like a archway coming to square. They were beautiful, and they were often covered with fabric, like the best fabric you could afford. And sometimes I wondered, looking at pieces like that, what is the inspiration? What is the reason for doing that wacky, pointy, very sharp, jagged border? Maybe she was looking at something like the pelmet or a piece of furniture that had those lines, and she thought, brainstorm. It's so curious. It's so much fun to visit houses of that age, because in the super rare instances when a historic house actually has some of the contents of the original house, it's nice to see those things together, because it all makes sense. You know what I mean? It's one thing if like a house from 1896 is rebought by a historical society, and then they look for a bunch of stuff that's circa 1790 to 1810, so that there's like appropriate stuff inside the house. That is fantastic. But it's even better when you're able to find a house where like the original contents of the house are much of it is still there, because sometimes there's a relationship between the wallpaper, the furniture, the art that you see on the walls. And it's fun to make those kinds of connections. It was a long time ago, wasn't it? Now, some of the things we're seeing here that we're seeing repeating from other examples of late 18th century needlework. In the sky, we are seeing those wispy clouds again that almost look like birds. In the example of the Crewelwork picture that we saw, they had like almost little collars on. It looked almost like a weasel or a ferret or a snake. In this case, it's the same shape and it must be clouds. So I'm going to reset my brain to think it's always clouds. It doesn't really make sense that there's a weasel in the sky. Might be a great name for a rock band, but it doesn't really make sense in this context. Everything is stylized, and that's what makes this era of design amazing. Notice how in the distance, right, there is sort of a soft horizon line. It goes from greeny blues to greeny blues, but darker greeny blues. And behind her skirt, there is kind of a gentle slope. Very romantic, very soft. But there is a taller skyline at the top of the hills or the mountains, and it just cuts over the trees, dips down low enough for you to get this little jagged glimpse of a bright white sky and these two wispy clouds. Classic 18th century design. And then filling as much of the space as possible with as many things as possible, right? Kitchen sink times. I mean, this is design from this period. The two trees are beautifully executed. The leaves, the shading on the leaves, right? That is super McGowan. Beautiful shading. Everything outlined lighter than it is. So take note of that. That is one of the things about this period of art that's interesting. We're not getting that dark outlining, right? They are, for the most part, outlining in light colors or white, and it is giving the work a different look. If you're able to do outlines and run very graphic lines, for example, the costume in white, then you're able to use shading to make all of those folds, all of that body, right, in the skirt. The skirt has this tremendous amount of gathering, body, weight, petticoats underneath, possibly like a panier type thing, like a cage, possibly. But it's a very full skirt. And they definitely wanted you to know that, right? Because it looks like silk. It's a luxury material for sure. It's super shiny. They definitely wanted you to know that this is not some wimpy little sort of milkmaid's costume. This is a giant skirt, and it's made out of a luxury material. And in this case, it's red, right? So that's always a sign of luxury, right? Getting anything that's this many colors of red. It's an extraordinary piece. It really is. It's not just that it's stitched beautifully. It has that folky feel with this main character being the female figure that is in very, very prominent in red. She's holding a fan, she's holding a flower, she might be trying to communicate something to the passing man. It's almost like he's a different species, right? He's like, it's like, not to be like indelicate, but it's like, I think of the Dutch word kabouter, like he's a gnome size compared to her. Again, doesn't really make sense. It's hard to come to grips with that in this composition because she's definitely not closer, right? He's definitely closer. So what's going on there? Is that a child? Is that a son? It's very hard to read that. But in any case, it's beautiful. It's almost like leap of faith. You have to accept that the characters that are down at the bottom, some kind of a stag, a dog, possibly two hunting dogs after the stag. You see there is like a hollow in the ground where there's a bird that appears to be underground. It's probably a little dirt ditch, but isn't that odd that the bird on the far right has like a little underground space around him that probably isn't underground? Why would a bird be underground? Do any birds go underground? In any case, I think we've got some hunting dogs and we've got a stag. We've got a bird of prey, right? So that is a symbol as well. Lots of birds and butterflies. So there's probably a lot of symbolism built into this. If you can get over the jarring sort of discrepancy between the human figures, then you're good. Certainly that is a scary looking bird. also, but you have to just make that leap. Otherwise, nothing is enjoyable to look at. You have to accept that in terms of proportion, it's not going to be justified. It's not going to make literal sense. Karen says reminds you of William Morris wallpaper color-wise. He did a lot with this. William Morris's most famous piece, I think, is the piece that's called Strawberry Thief, and it definitely has this feel to it. It's a bird, it's a repeat bird pattern, but it definitely has the feel of this, and certainly the color palette. And Wendy says, if young girls were still doing embroidery today, what would it look like? That's a great question. That's a great question. And I think that's a great question. And the thing is, I don't think it could ever be apples and apples at this point. And the difference is, and I don't want to show a marked opinion on this, but the difference is when kids do stuff now, and I am happy about this part of it, when kids do stuff now, the guidance in terms of art instruction seems to be you do it the way you want it, let your light shine, right? I say that every day to Joss, let your light shine, do it your way, let your personality show through. But at this time, that was not the philosophy. It was like, do the leaf this way, do the cherry this way. The horse, it doesn't look right, right? There was a right and a wrong, and you would be graded on your needlework. So it would be apples if it was like for pleasure, and girls were able to say, well, I like the way the legs look because it implies more motion or more speed, or I like the way this looks because symbolically it's supposed to mean that he is like a less important whatever. But at the end of the day, there was such I'm envisioning very sort of hovering, scary, I think, by the sound of it, a lot of these boarding schools that taught girls how to do needle arts, scary element. We'll just say, scary element, lots of rules, hints of the 20th century, right, at private school, but I think even more so. So interesting. It's interesting. What I would really like to know is what girls from this period would have stitched if they weren't being micromanaged. That would be, and there probably are examples of that, like ones that are not the fine sampler ones that are in museums. But I wonder if there's ever little snippets that girls did on a little patch that ripped off their dress that were completely wacky and different. That would be an interesting thing to research. They must be out there. Art teachers say learn the rules before you break them. Most art teachers do say that. I think they're saying that less and less, really. And I'm not even sure that I believe that myself. That's a Picasso-ism. It is good to know the rules. It is good to know why you're doing what you're doing. But I think the trends in education change all the time. And the best example is math. It used to be however you got the answer, it didn't matter. They didn't need to see it. As long as you got the right answer every time, they knew you knew how to do it, even if it was in your head and nothing on paper. And then it was like, no, we have to see everything you're doing, like longhand or whatever they called it. You have to see all of the work. And now I think they're still at that place where you have to show all the work. But trends in teaching change also from generation to generation, which is really, it's a strange area to see such big, heavy pendulum swings, But it is it's an interesting subject, and I would love to find out what girls from this era did that wasn't very formal and wasn't under the eye of a teacher or an instructor. That would be interesting. And I would like to see more girls nowadays doing needle arts in general. And so this is the line drawing. This is the third line drawing I did. So this is the line drawing for the Hannah Carter canvas work picture. It's just called Hannah Carter. So these are at Ribbon Candy Hooking. The links to all three of these pieces are in this video, but also on the homepage of Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm going to keep going. This is the Rebecca Carter sampler. This is a very famous one. I especially love this one because it comes from Providence, Rhode Island, and I grew up mostly in Providence. This is a famous piece I've seen many times in my life because color-wise, it's amazing. It bears all of the sampler rules out, right? There's text, there's alphabet, there's writing, there's some kind of a motto, there's figures, right? But it's beyond that. It's not just ticking the boxes. This piece has got all different kinds of stitches. I should have said it also includes metallic thread, which was certainly a luxury item, and human hair. So I'm not seeing it super close up. I can see it signed by Rebecca Carter at the bottom, 1788. This is 19 and a quarter by 13 and a half. Now, normally I would think of a piece like this with human hair as a mourning piece. I don't know. I can't read it enough. Honor and renown, something, the ingenious state house. Okay, so this is the then state house in Providence. Um, you can probably read it a little bit better than me because I've got it real small. But this must have been the early state house. There's a different state house now that's much larger. This must have been the original state house. So this is also a known place, making this even more important. You know, this is a great piece. If you look to the right and left of the house, right, we're seeing that incredible symmetry of the two sides. We're seeing the fences going up, right, and a character on both sides of the house. Proportions off, great, right, making it a great folky piece. This is 1788. Interesting because I see something about the crown. Do I see something about the crown? That shouldn't be. This certainly wasn't a loyalist area in 1788. Interesting, but you do see on the right the male character has got like a classic like William Penn type hat on, right? Like Shaker Quaker type meeting house hat on. And that is interesting because, I mean, this area, Providence, right, was really the first place in the U.S. that actually had religious freedom. Not just said they were coming for religious freedom, but actually granted the residents religious freedom. That's what Rhode Island is known for. So it is curious that the character is wearing that style of hat. The first meeting house in the U.S. is in Newport, Rhode Island. And she has more of a Sunbonnet Sue outfit on. She is very fashionable. Interesting costumes happening here. You see there's more information down at the bottom. There are two more vignettes at the bottom on both sides of the urn or the vase, and more sort of storytelling through pictures. It is just an extraordinary piece. This is not one that I ended up doing because I think the parts that would be, in terms of translation, most desirable, for example, a rug hooker, would be the figural scenes, right? The state house with the two characters. On the right, there's a deer. On the left, I think there's another animal, but I can't make it out. I also see a cat on the right. The female's holding a bird. You know, it's very, very rare to see like a family pet like a cat in any kind of art. Portraits, maybe portraits, right? Pets are often in portraits. But embroidery, right? I can't think of another embroidery that I've seen that shows the domestic cat and his little tail is up. Like he feels perfectly safe. He's not darting around like with dilated eyes like he's about to be killed or caught. He's perfectly happy and he feels safe. So this seems to be like a family pet. It's almost got like a peaceable kingdom feel to it, with all of these characters getting along and all of the animals getting along. It really is a great statement and a great advertisement for Rhode Island, even at this time, right? It just had an atmosphere of incredible tolerance and diversity. So I just love this piece. I've always loved this piece. I bought an insanely expensive book of samplers that we will look at together as we get into our sampler thing, probably right at the beginning of the new year. And the only reason I bought it was because, well, I mean, I bought it because I wanted it, but it has a blow up of that particular piece, really high quality, and I just wanted to see it a lot closer. Um, and until I got ready for the slideshow and I saw this at the Folk Art Museum, I didn't realize that the Folk Art Museum had this piece. I'm going to write to them and see if it's possible to go see this in person. I feel so connected and in love with that specific piece. This is another gorgeous piece with the same kind of proportion, right? The other one had a little bit more going on. This is a little top heavy in terms of like text and the sampler part of the sampler. I can't make out. Tell me if you can make out. Oh, May, I always can't make it out. A lot of text, including a verse, right? Not just letters and numbers, also verse. This is the Lucy Lowe sampler. This was made in 1776, so the year that this country became a country. Lucy was born in 1764. She died in 1842. So 1764, 74. So she was 12 years old when she made this. Remarkable, isn't it? It just goes to show you the age of when girls would go to schools to learn domestic crafts at that time. It was young. Now, this one, I think I will stretch it just a little bit, and I am going to run over a little bit. I can't run over too much because Joss wants me to take her out to the trampoline park again. Oh, may I always read something with my lamp burning in my hand. May I always something stand. May I always something stand with my lamp burning in my hand. May I or heaven before something to mean the bridegroom's voice. Rejoice, heaven rejoice, something, or heaven rejoice, something to mean the bridegroom's voice. Can't make it out. If you can make it out, let me know. That is ready. May I always ready stand. Yep, with my lamp burning in my hand. May I something or heaven rejoice, something to mean the bridegroom's voice. We're getting pretty close. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. I want one more shot at that. Lots of stitches in this sample. Are you noticing the staggered color, the lots of stitches, and the loss? There's a lot of loss in this one. Luckily not in the verse, but look at all the practice stitches that are being done here. I can't get that last little bit. In any case, so this is the Lucy Lowe sampler, 14.5 by 11 3/8. This is silk on linen, and this is from Danvers, Massachusetts. May I sing or heaven rejoice. May I sing or heaven rejoice. Joy to hear the bridegroom's voice. That's got to be it, right? That's got to be it. Okay, I think we got there. One of the things I think that's really confusing is the way that some of the uppercase letters are handled. Sight of heaven, the sight of heaven. May I'm not sure. It does look like sight. Let's come back. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to leave you all to it. I'm getting sucked into it because it's a great puzzle. Oh, and then at the bottom, Lucy Lowe, her song. It says, does it say Lucy Lowe, her song in blue? Is that what it says? And then it says something after that I can't make out. And then waves. Did you see the waves in the stitches? These stitches are incredible. There is a lot of loss, but there's a lot still here. So the majority of the pictorial part of this composition is way at the bottom. It's almost like a scroll. The decorative part is at the bottom, and it is so beautiful. Again, look at the blockiness of the trees. Look at the color fill of the trees, how the colors change. Did they change over time? We don't know. Maybe. Look at how well articulated her skirt is. His sort of lapels are, he's got on a soldier's uniform, right? That's definitely a soldier's uniform, like a Minuteman's uniform. That's a revolutionary costume for sure. Neither of them are wearing a hat, I don't think. Is she wearing any kind of bonnet? Because that would be unusual. She does have her apron on, so that part's right. Lots of little animals. Are they sheep, goats, grazing? Even the teeny one under the flower bush. And look at all the color change in both the grass with all of those greens, but also the blue sky. Isn't that something? Joy to hear the bridegroom's voice. May I something or heaven rejoice. Joy, something joy. Gosh, that's weird. Anyway, we'll come back to that at some point. The way that the birds are outlined too in the foreground are absolutely extraordinary. I think this is just an extraordinary piece. I'm going to kind of race through. The birds are primitive captured compared to the flowers, Wendy. The birds are, yeah, you're right. They are really, and isn't that interesting? I guess one would have time to consider a flower and look at its form and make good decisions. Birds kind of fly by fast. Maybe it's just harder to kind of capture them. For me, even when I draw birds, even though I can photograph them at this point in time, I still find their bodies difficult and unusual, like an unusual shape. But flowers, yeah, they're good. They stand still for a while. And it's such a beautiful flowering bush. It looks like a rose bush. Such a cheerful composition. It's very, very happy. I love the use of yellow in this. There's so much yellow. It makes me wonder if it was gold or if it was metallic thread. It doesn't say, it just says silk on linen. It's an extraordinary piece. This looks like tiny, tiny, tiny cross stitch, as well, like the trees, as well as needlepoint stitches. There's obviously, I'm not a good enough stitcher to know how many stitches are represented in this one piece, but I bet you it's like dozens. There are so many up top with all of the lettering. It's a bonkers piece. It is just fantastic. Less complicated, but still a gorgeous piece, pictorial table rug from 1840, possibly from Otisfield, Maine. This is wool applique, gauze, and embroidery on wool. This is 29 by 53. Another beautiful piece, more related to the kinds of things that we see in our craft, penny rugs, wool applique. Still a needle craft, right? Very, very simple composition. This, out of everything we've seen, I think would make a stellar rug. Very, very simple. The filigree nature of the fences, that is a big part of the bling here, isn't it? That's the thing. That works so well in applique with stitching. The clunky, heavy nature of the houses. Isn't it curious that you don't need any background colors? You just need to curl or curve the fence posts up to show that the church is on top of a hill. Isn't that fun? Because the fences are the same size, but it looks like the church is farther away. It's a sort of an optical illusion, isn't it? And then the pen wipers around the edges that were probably, they were cut with pinking shears, it looks like. They were probably detachable, so you, if it's being used as something for the top of a desk, you might want to wipe the edge of your pen on them when you're signing stuff, and then be able to detach them, wash them, and reattach them. Possible. Those are usually called pen wipers around the edge. But this has got so much stitching in it, as well as applique. I'm guessing the gauze is under the house forms to make them a little bit more three-dimensional. Very nice piece. Do you notice around the door of the of the yellow house, you get like the fanlight window, the transom, and the cutouts on the side, right? Typically a transom was there so that you could see if there was a fire inside the house. Fire was such a huge risk in the olden days, right? People had transoms for the sole purpose that their neighbors, if they looked over, could see if there was a house fire, particularly if you were sleeping, or you didn't realize it had broken out. That's mostly what the glass around doors is about. But this is just beautiful, ornate, decorative, lovely needle and felt work. Very different. This is another piece that's very different. It's known as cow blanket. This is a 20th century piece made in 1937 by Kate Clayton, known as Granny Donaldson. Her life was between 1864 and 1960, so she was 96 years old. She lived to be that old. She was born during the Civil War, and she died in 1960. What a span, right? So many. She saw a lot of things in that time, but this piece was made in 1937. This is wool with wool applique, and this is 29 by 28. Granny Donaldson lived in the vicinity of Brasstown, North Carolina. This was a gift to the museum. This is a curious piece. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm only picking pieces that are unusual, right? I'm not just picking the run-of-the-mill stuff. We've got one more after this, and then I've got a jet. If you look at this close up, do you see what I see? Yes, it's applique. Yes, it's wool applique. But can you see that she has either crocheted or knitted the forms, including the tree, the branches of the tree, the sort of grape-shaped leaves? She has either knitted them, I mean, to me that looks crocheted, and then applied them. So yes, they are wool yarn, but she hasn't cut out wool and stitched it down. That's not what she's done here. Isn't this an interesting piece? She's been able to manipulate the little legs and tails and all of the body parts of these various animals so that they fit the space that she is trying to populate. And it's so interesting because of the pattern within the pattern. Now she's got this laid down on some kind of a woven, right? It's like a sort of denim colored woven. It's probably something right off someone's loom. And she thought, I'll decorate that and make this lots of fun. And she had this great idea of doing it in this style. Isn't this exceptional? In this case, it's like the man is holding what looks like an apple basket. Let me make it small again. I just wanted you to be able to see. Now, remember, this piece is not out of copyright. This is, what did I say? Hang on. Doing two things at once. Arya, get the kids ready to go out. Can hear them all lurking in the background. Okay, 1937. So this piece is not out of copyright. So you would not want to copy this piece and do it as a rug design. It would be a copy. It's a copyrighted piece because of the year of Granny's death, 1960. Right. It is a stunning piece. You can't really do this without infringing on copyright. But if you're good at crocheting, right, or you love wool applique, for me, the thing about this piece is not the shapes of the animals. It's the fact that they are crocheted. With such a fine hook, this is going to be like one of these tiny tatting scaled hooks, right? One of these tiny fine hooks. But you can see some of the yarns she's used are variegated or are multicolored. And she's laid them down. She stitched them onto the backing. And it's just such a cool kind of puzzle piece with lots of wool, lots of interest. It has a topsy-turvy quality like a Magdalena Briner Eby piece, but it does feel like a 20th century piece to me. And I think part of it is the costume and the ankles showing, right? But it does feel like a farming, not just because of the farm animals, but the male figure to me looks like a farmer, right? In terms of like the clothing, right? Just big, open kind of dungarees or overalls or something like that. It's an extraordinary piece. Judy says, was the silk the common thread for embroidery as opposed to wool or cotton floss? You know, Judy, I don't know, but I would say the things that I have seen that are from, for example, the 18th century, they seem to always be silk. I'm not seeing a lot of cotton or linen. And I don't know why. I don't know enough about production at that time, and I don't even know that they would call it floss as opposed to thread. It's something that's worthy of research, and I'm definitely going to go down the rabbit hole as soon as I get myself set up for the holidays. When we start this whole movement toward looking at samplers and translating samplers into rug design, that's going to be like the next big thing that this brand does, and I bet I will find out the answer right in there. Um, it could be one of those things that I'm thinking about the history of the country store, because that is something I've read up on a lot. And like a country store, say you lived in Danvers, like one of these makers lived in Danvers, Massachusetts. At that time, Danvers was fairly cosmopolitan. It wasn't Boston, but it was near Boston. They would have gotten, for example, using that as an example, they would have gotten the traveling salesmen who were coming from the port cities like Boston through their area, selling things that were interesting and luxury items. Whether you could afford them isn't the same as they were available. So we do see different things from like community to community. Port towns get lots of everything, and if you can afford stuff, you get the most luxury stuff. The more remote you go, the less choices people have. And then we're seeing people, working on looms or sharing looms and making homespun and using that as their principal backing fabric for everything, whether it's home decor or clothing. And in more sort of wealthy areas or places where people would have more choices, or there would be a country store that serviced the community, because there wasn't always that. I mean, that's why the peddlers existed, because there wasn't always a country store to serve the community. It's like a crazy thought that you couldn't even get it at a store, that you would have to like get on your horse and or wagon, sometimes not even wagon, just man on horse. Imagine, I bet he can hear me, imagine giving your husband a shopping list, like sending him off for 2 weeks to go to the town that had a country store with a shopping list of things you really need. Like, I could use a tortoise hair clip. I know what I would get. I would get nothing that was on the list, I'll tell you. But that's how it worked, right? Women did not go to market. They like kept the house. Men would go towns over and pick up this stuff. Unless you had a country store in your town, and then they would have they would have fabric on the bolt. They would have all kinds of materials for crafts, because they weren't for crafts. They were for like sewing curtains and clothing and bedding and stuff like that, and they were necessary. But yeah, I'm going to research this subject a lot more, because I love thinking about and talking about what was available to who, when, where, and how that correlates to choices that were made and the materials that we see in fiber pieces from settlement days, like right up to now, right? It's such an interesting subject. We'll watch from the start. Oh, hey, Goretti, good to see you. This is a weird day. I'm not surprised. It's a weird day. It's an easy day to miss. This is a total crazy pop up. So that was called Cow Blanket, which is a funny name for it because, number one, it's small. It appears to be neither a blanket nor a cow item, unless it was meant to go over the cow. Do you think it's possible that this was a blanket for a cow? Is that possible? Like, how would that work? Would the let's assume it's a blanket for a cow. Number one, it's very clean. Would it be like there was a picture on both sides? Would it? How? Why? Because it doesn't look warm either, does it? I mean, it just looks like woven linen or flax or something. Interesting. Let me know if anybody knows that. I don't know my cow blankets, that's for sure. This is the last image for tonight. This is a little bit of a departure from what we've been talking about because this is obviously not a textile piece, but she's loaded with textiles. This is a painting from the Folk Art Museum that's called Woman with a Pink Neck Ribbon. Creative. Attributed to Jonas Holman. Jonas's life was an itinerant painter, right? Was between 1805 to 1873, and the date of this piece is somewhere between 1830 and 1835. So he would have been between 25 and 30 when he painted this piece. Probably Maine. Oil. I don't know, Barbara, if a cow blanket is the thing. I was hoping you all would know. I'll go down the rabbit hole when I take Joss to the trampoline park. That's where we're headed again. So this is probably Maine, 28 by 24, so it's not an enormous piece. This is in the public domain because of the year, right? 1830, 1835. It's definitely in the public domain. I just included this because I thought this is a good way to end this segment looking at these items from the Folk Art Museum. You know, you see a lot of portraiture, but this portrait struck me as, God, I would love to be friends with her. Doesn't she really seem different than the other portraits you see of women from this time? I mean, she is, I love the lace around the neck, right? The collar would have been detachable. So that's like modesty. She's got this detachable lace collar. She's got it buttons up with something like something brass or some fancy metal closure. But that collar is kind of sitting on top of an otherwise open dress. It definitely would have been detachable to wash. And then she's got this extra piece of bling. It's a pink ribbon that it has like some kind of, I don't know if the right word is jacquard, but there's some kind of a woven pattern in the ribbon. And it's like a preppy color, like it's pink and green. It is so pretty. There's no clue as to how she's got it tacked on, but she looks so modest, so pretty. Her face is so contemporary looking. She looks like she would be a model these days. She's so different looking. You know what I mean? A little bit of a cleft to the chin. Do you see how she's got the hair around her ear brushed forward a little bit? Men used to do that. I don't see that a lot with women's style. That's for me odd. Beautiful, expensive jewelry. She's got some kind of a huge comb in her hair, probably tortoise. That big square rectangle thing, that's a giant comb that would have probably been tortoise or something that had a natural curve to it that would be carved so it fit like comfortably against her head, wasn't flat. She's got a beautiful locket with somebody's name or picture in there. Probably not picture, but little painting or sketch. And she's holding a book. I can't see what the book says. Can anybody see what that book says? But very, very simple composition with the theatrical curtain off to the side, right? That's interchangeable. That's nothing to do with her, with Woman with Pink Ribbon. That could have been a painted background that was just like a general go-to that was painted after the person, the painter did this, right? A painter would not have the sitter sit indefinitely. The sitter would sit for however long it took to get enough of the sketch down that the painter could then take it to the hotel or the boarding house or whatever they was, the tavern, wherever they were staying, and finish working on it. But he wouldn't hold up the sitter by having him or her sit there while he painted a theatrical curtain in the background. He also would not have traveled with pre-painted pieces because that is an absolute falsity and an ongoing but persistent myth, because these people traveled with like as little as possible with them. They would not have been bringing along, full-size canvases and stuff already stretched. That is ludicrous. But beautiful piece of costume history, Lots of lovely touches. And Barbara, you're right. The makeup on her face, she probably has none on. It's the cheek pinching, or maybe like some kind of jelly, like petroleum jelly stuff. Um, it's probably not there at all. He probably just enhanced her beauty by making her have a little bit of extra color, making her look healthy, right? Looking healthy, having rosy cheeks, rosy lips. That was like a good sign of fertility. You weren't pallid and on death's door. Having a little bit of color in your cheek, not having a sunburn, but having a little bit of color in your face was attractive to men because it seemed like a good fertility cue. You know what I mean? The blood is rushing, in other words. Things seem to be working. But I think she's just beautiful. I thought she was an exceptional looking character in a world of lots of surviving portraits from this period, but very few people looking that engaging and relatable to us now, 2024, almost 2025. I better go. Everybody's waiting for me. I can't hear it, but I can feel it, you know? So I'm going to go do all the things I need to do evening-wise, taking people where they need to go. And I will be back with you tomorrow night to look at the new Atha magazine at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when I log back on for coffee time. Make sure you look at the new products at the Ribbon Candy Hooking Store. I have 3 pieces that were based on this series of shows from the Folk Art Museum that would be a lot of fun and I think really successful, done as hooked rugs as opposed to embroideries. Those are there for you at Ribbon Candy Hooking. And all of the other new things that I've mentioned. Remember also that the Design Like Photography class is recorded. That will run on Sunday night, but it is recorded. So if you can't make it and you're interested in hearing that conversation, seeing all of those images, getting a seat of the pants kind of in a nutshell history of 20th century photography, and the opportunity to do a few fun and very sort of steering you towards specific compositions. It's a great opportunity to do all of those things. So I hope I will see you there too. In any case, I will be back tomorrow night. See you at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow night, Friday night, the 22nd. Have a great tomorrow.